A time I've pivoted, I have two of them. My first major pivot in business was after the 2008 financial crisis. I had just started my first company in the motorcycle space. It was a motorcycle lock. Our customers were motorcyclists. So as with any financial downturn, one of the first things to go is your discretionary income. Motorcycles, boats, RVs, toys. My company was funded by investors in New York in 2005. So we only had 3 years we were in business at that point. And we were selling products made for Harley-Davidson riders in America, right? So these were American-made products selling to Harley riders in America. 2008 comes along, the early days of the pinch, it was things like mortgages, right? And then as things started to get worse and unfold, we started to notice in our company, customers not buying new motorcycles. And our first sales pitch was, you bought a new Harley, $30,000, buy our lock to protect your investment. Now people aren't buying motorcycles. They're either selling what they have or they're keeping their motorcycle and they're making improvements to it. Fine. So we did a mini pivot. Now we're starting to talk to customers and saying, you're not buying a new bike, but while you're investing in making your bike better, buy a lock for it. Then we get further into the crisis and we realize we need to make a major pivot. So in 2009, our company decided we needed to look to other countries to sell, not to manufacture. And the first country looked towards was China. And that's actually how I started my relationships with manufacturing in China. I didn't go to China to make the product there to make it cheaper to sell in America. I went to China to sell our American-made product into China. Part of the hurdle that the company had was, as we were backed by investors and we realized, our company wasn't even close to break even, we were trying to figure out how we were going to reprice our product to sell into the market in China. Our idea from all the way on the other side of the earth was we needed to lower the price. When I finally went to China in 2009, I realized we need to raise the price because the market in China tolerates that. We ended up not only getting out of Harley-Davidson, we changed the entire makeup of the company all the way down to the product we offered. Instead of focusing on Harley-Davidson American-made, we started focusing on European motorcycles and Chinese motorcycles sold into China and Europe. We changed our product from a somewhat customized part for Harleys to a product that focused on being universal to cover a broader range of motorcycles. We cut our product price in half and our messaging changed. So instead of selling to the $30,000 Harley owner, we're now trying to sell a lock to someone who spent maybe $12,000 on a motorcycle. Our entire company went from premium products sold for American motorcycles to the complete opposite of lightweight, half the price, sold primarily in Europe and China. And it's still sold pretty much only in Europe. And that was our first major pivot. And that taught us as business owners, had we not had, we didn't have as much foresight. I don't think anybody really knew the extent of the 2008 downturn at the beginning. Had we not had investors that were used to that, because it was my first company, I was very young, but I had very seasoned investors, we probably wouldn't have made that change fast enough. Now that company started in 2005, it's still in business today. It's still going, but again, it's selling into Europe with a different product, different price point, different consumer, different message. That was our first major, and that taught me that you can pivot and survive something as bad as a financial downturn. Second pivot in business happened during COVID, which is probably like, oh yeah, everybody pivoted in COVID. Like a lot of businesses, we had to figure out how to stay in business. We had to figure out how to survive the pandemic. In the early days of the pandemic, like everybody, we didn't know how long it was going to last. We didn't know the implications, how far it was going to reach. But in my business of laundromats, we realized, at least in California, we were able to stay open. I had just invested into a very large facility in 2018, 2019, and we were growing. So when you have a pandemic that shuts down socializing, it shuts down schools, and it shuts down workplace, all of a sudden you have a lowered demand on cleaning clothes. Not only that, you have to lock down your business. So laundromats were allowed to stay open. Great. So we could service people that wanted to come in. The problem was, because of how large our operation was, we really needed to focus on not just cutting expenses and taking advantage of some of these government programs like PPP, some of the EIDL loans. We had to figure out how to make money to support these state-of-the-art facilities that we built. So in thinking outside the box, from being a walk-in publicly run laundromat, I started bringing in my experience with the finance world and started calculating the useful life of the machinery we had. We had a couple hundred washers and dryers. We had these very costly assets, and we had time we could put on them. So where I started focusing was how we could utilize those machines without using the public, but doing some private. So I reached out to a funded software company that was doing basically like Uber for laundry, and made a deal with them at the height of the pandemic. This was December of 2020. Made a deal with them to utilize our facilities to launder their clothes as they were growing, because people were staying at home and needed to get their laundry done. We started providing that service with the intermediary of the software company, and we were able to double our business during the pandemic. That pivot changed. It not only changed the structure of our day-to-day, it also increased, it doubled our valuation. It improved our workflow dramatically. It allowed us to gain more control over the quality and the handling of our machines, because our people were using these machines at overnight processing. And it also allowed us to integrate software and technology into our operation that we normally would have never done. Things like accounting software, or software to measure how much the machine was actually being used, so we knew that if we were profitable or not. So that pivot not only saved our somewhat new investment, but it also, post-pandemic, as we started getting more traffic, schools open up, people were laundering their clothes, it just further increased the value of our facility. So that pivot was, like anything, your back's against the wall. I maybe would have done something different, but that first pivot in 2008 taught me that you can think outside the box. With the right kind of analysis, you can survive something as devastating as a financial downturn, or a pandemic that also leads to a financial downturn. So